Hello. Well, the Olympic Games are drawing towards a close, but I'm sure that for the last couple of weeks many of us will have been glued to the TV, watching the amazing efforts of people who trained for years to get to the top of their sport and who are now competing for Olympic glory. I am in awe of the dedication of the athletes who make so many sacrifices to get to the top, because I know they are very different to me. Because anyone who's attended Christchurch over the last 20 years will almost certainly have heard me mention my great claim to sporting fame. I was the 1970 Suffolk Junior Schoolboy long jump champion. The summer of 1970 was one of my best. I'd only just taken up athletics seriously and discovered that I was a natural sprinter and jumper. And it was fun. Training with friends, going to competitions against other schools, sitting around in the sun. This was what I wanted to do. My sights were firmly set on Montreal 1976. I was pretty sure that by then I would be Olympic standard. And then winter came, and that wasn't so good. Instead of training at school with friends, it was a case of getting up while it was still dark and going on my own to the local rec and trying to train on my own. My enthusiasm began to wane. Then came the summer of 1971. I was no longer a junior schoolboy. I was with the older, bigger lads. And despite all the training I did, I didn't win anything that year. And then came the winter of 1971. The early mornings, in the dark, the cold and wet. And I found it harder and harder to get out of bed in the morning. And then I got glandular fever. And somehow after that, I never got going again. And as those of you who are old enough and who spent the summer of 1976 watching the Montreal Olympics on TV will know, I wasn't there. It is something I think about now and again, usually when I have to run to get somewhere and grind to a standstill after about 25 yards. And it may be that I'm the only one in Christchurch who's had this problem with perseverance. But I suspect that isn't the case. Partly because I've seen it in others. People who've had great potential at sport, but who have kind of let it fizzle out. And I've seen it in churches. I've lost count of the big initiatives which I've seen start, but which seem to have gone nowhere. Big prayer initiatives, which have run for a few months and then... And I've seen it in the life of individual Christians who've started out with such passion and enthusiasm, only for it all to fizzle out after a while. It seems that we're so much better at dreaming than we are at working, especially when the novelty's worn off and the work gets hard. And I think that's always been a danger. Let me read from Hebrews 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Let us run with perseverance. Let us not grow weary and lose heart. Let us not be like Graham Cousins. The last 18 months have been really hard for many people personally, but also hard for us as a church. And as things start, hopefully, to return to some sort of normality, there is a big temptation not to get back into it. To be like me after my bout of glandular fever and just not get going again. To let discipleship and fellowship take a back seat. Doing that is one of the things that can really hinder us in our discipleship. It can become a sin which entangles us, keeps us from being our best for the Lord. For me, one of the highlights of the Olympics was the men's high jump, where Gianmarco Tamberi and Mutaj Bashim shared the gold medal. 5 years ago, Tamberi suffered a broken ankle that forced him out of the Rio Games. How easy it would have been for him to quit then. But he didn't. He said from the moment his plaster cast was removed, he was determined he would win gold at Tokyo. And anyone who saw his elation at winning gold will know that all the work was worth it. For all the competitors at the Games, performing at that level requires immense discipline. It requires perseverance. As I said, I'm in awe of the discipline shown by top athletes, especially those who don't have big funding programs behind them. Training every day, often up early to train before going to work, and then again when work is finished. Diet completely dictated not by what they like to eat, but by what will keep them fit. I look at that and I compare it with my own commitment, not to athletics, but to being a Christian disciple. And I admit, I don't come out of that comparison too well. The great thing about a passage like this one from Hebrews 12 is that it doesn't just tell us that we need to persevere, which can just make us feel guilty. It gives us a model to follow. We need to fix our eyes on Jesus. He came to earth knowing that he would die on a cross, bearing the sin of the world, but he didn't give up. He ran with perseverance the race marked out for him. And as we remember that, it encourages us not to grow weary and lose heart, but to keep going. Not to let the frustrations of the last 18 months switch us off from discipleship. Because in the life of discipleship, everyone who stays faithful to the Lord Jesus and reaches the end of the race wins gold.